good morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on where you are in the world right now. My name is Tunir, and I welcome all of our participants, speakers, and attendees. It was with a great pleasure that we gather here today for our webinar, which is called Revolutionizing Procurement, Harnessing the Potential of AI and Next-Gen Technologies. In an era where technology is reshaping industries at an unprecedented rate, we are presented with an extraordinary opportunity to reimagine procurement processes and practices. Now, over the next 45 minutes, we will deep dive into, a dynamic intersection, if I can call that, of artificial intelligence and next generation technologies, exploring how they are poised to reshape procurement as we know it. Our esteemed panel of experts will share insights, experiences, vision that will undoubtedly inspire us all. So let's embark on this journey of discovering together as we unlock the potential of AI and usher in the new era of procurement excellence. Now, again, thank you for joining us. Let's make this webinar an enlightening and engaging experience for everybody that's involved today. Just before I kick things off, I'd like to point out that you as an attendee have the option of asking questions from our speakers today as well. So please type in your questions and we'll pick those up towards the end of the webinar, time permitting, of course. And even if we can't pick your question, we'll certainly get back to you over an email. Now, I'd like to start by introducing our first speaker of the day, as well as our keynote speaker, GEP's Vice President of Consulting, Mr. Lalit Nambirajan, to set the tone. Over to you, Lalit. Thank you.
Thank you very much and welcome all. So what I'd like to do is maybe talk through 3 topics here. So first, I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction to AI, generative AI within that, and what are large language models. And just, why is this such a compelling story today? Because AI has been in for the last decade at least, and why is that so important right now? I think that's something we just get to. Then I think coming to the more important part about how should companies organize to harness AI, and I'm looking at it from a purely procurement lens. How should we then organize ourselves, our data, our systems, and so on to harness this entire capability? And third, just a very quick note on what are some of the nuances or the cautions that we need to think about when we acquire AI capabilities. So how do we go about that? And this is not only for procurement, but as a procurement function, you would also be going out and then procuring AI capabilities and services for other functions as well for your organization. So it's just good to kind of keep all those caveats in mind and just have a framework to evaluate such services and products and so on. So that's what we'll cover today, and I'll get it started. So getting into the first one, introduction to AI, just very quickly, right? If we look at the overall AI landscape, within artificial intelligence overall, what we have basically machine learning. And this can be, again, multiple types. It can be supervised or unsupervised learning and so on. A lot of the work that we've been doing within that is in deep learning. And maybe it will also help to. So this is deep learning. It's basically, it concerns mostly with building neural nets, which are, by themselves black boxes, but they have a series of nodes interacting with each other with a lot of data. And they kind of align themselves in a logic, which then takes inputs and gives you outputs. And then you're trying to figure out which neural net is a better fit, which neural net model is a better fit for your problem statement and so on. So that's basically deep learning. And within that, what you can see is a class of AI, which is generative AI. This is around AI which can create new content today. So that's what we're using this for. This is what is getting us all excited about it. Otherwise, other forms of AI, especially deep learning, deep neural nets, has been there in use for a while. And within the generative AI, there are 3 types which are important. There's a transformer-based language models, then the variational autoencoders, and then the GANs, the generative adversarial networks. So if you see any deepfake videos, they're coming from GANs. And now within the transformer-based language models is what we have the large language models, and this is where we have the ChatGPT as well as an example. right? So a few key terms just to understand and navigate around this entire bit. ChatGPT by itself is just an interface which helps you connect to a large language model. What are large language models? They're systems that learn the relationships between words, and then they're able to tokenize a whole data stream, and then they're able to work with that and get you outputs, right? So that's basically an LLM in a very simplistic way. A foundational model, and you'll hear this term again and again quite a bit, but these are basically models trained on vast quantities of unstructured data, and they can do specific tasks like summarize things, like rank things, prioritize them, and so on. So those are things that they can do. And then you have generative AI, which is a term for any AI system that can generate content. And like we said, there are at least 3 subclasses within that which are of importance or note. So this is a very quick primer on the artificial intelligence landscape. Just to talk now on that generative AI part of it, particularly the LLM linked generative AI. What I have here is the interface on the top. And what we have then is the underlying deep neural network foundational model, which is below, right? And there are examples now. So ChatGPT is by OpenAI, right? And this is then using a foundational model, which is either GPT 3.5 or GPT 4 today. If we look at again, so this is what is this example here. On the Bing side, if you go, so Bing Chat is the interface which directly interacts with you. It could be using a GPT 3.5, GPT 4 model, right? It could be using some others like Dolly, for example. Then you have Bard by Google. It is using Lambda by Google. That's Lambda is the foundational model equivalent to the GPT-4. And then Hugging Chat is again an open source interface, and it can use multiple of these foundational models. For example, Llama is one by Meta, but it could also work with Lambda, could also work with ChatGPT and so on. So that's basically how you're using it. So this is just clarifying a little bit of the AI space. Now, this AI, like I said, has been around for over a decade. So why the sudden hype? We had all the ingredients. There's massive amount of data, zettabytes of data, which was available, immense computing power, right, reaching to petaflops. Then 30 billion IoT devices, 8 billion mobile devices, 5 billion internet users across. Our population is around 7-8 billion, so this is a fairly large number already, right? And over 90% of enterprises use cloud infrastructure in some form since at least till 2019 onwards. I think the main problem is difficulty in digesting data, because over 90% of all this wonderful data around is unstructured. It doesn't come in Excel files, it doesn't come in rows and columns with fields which are clearly laid out. They're all in either text, in chat, in picture form, in audios and videos, and so on. So that's really the problem. What have we been doing so far in traditional AI ML has not been scalable. And that's because of plenty of reasons. One, you require very clear machine learning skill sets and expertise. So there needs to be an ML expert to kind of do something. The training examples are required to build models. So you need a certain amount of training data where it can learn all the patterns and everything, and then it is able to apply it on live data going forward. So that data set has to be created. There should not be errors. It needs to be a clean data set, which is again a lot of problem to try and prepare that. Models take time to be trained. And our focus was basically on some sort of a loss error function, right? So this is not exactly intuitive. Sometimes it is purely mechanical or a metricized number, and there is a gain function that you're trying to optimize. So that's really the problem in terms of specifying whether this model is hugely successful or not. Other requirements, like you need compute resources, so you need processing capacity, CPU and so on. You need hardware. You need to kind of have it somewhere. So there's an infrastructure requirement as well. The problem was a lot of these things, after being trained, were extremely narrow. So they could do one thing. Like, for example, it could predict how and when a particular machine could break down, right? So let's say it's a sheet metal machine in a plant. But the moment you bring it out and you try to apply the same model to, say, a painting machine, it'll fail. You bring it out to, say, a conveyor belt, it will not work. You require, again, the whole thing to be done again, right? So that was the problem. So it was not scalable to be used across multiple requirements. So that was one issue. Now, why is generative AI so different? It's training on a massive data set, right, at the scale of the internet. So that's something which is great. The foundation model is already trained to perform multiple task types. So it is not narrow. It can do multiple things. And it has the ability to work with multiple data types, where we said 90% of all data was kind of, unstructured. This is something that is able to digest all of that data. So what you have then, is a fairly democratic use. That means I don't have to go to an ML expert. I can basically sit on the interface and just chat into what I need, really. So that's the prompt engineering that I'm doing. It's really scalable across multiple problem types, and I can use unstructured data, right? So this is the explosion in usage, and this promise to kind of massively raise productivity and efficiency, because I don't have a long time to stand up a model and apply that to my problem and get answers from that. And I don't need to go through multiple intermediaries in that entire process. So this is the promise. Now, the second question is then, well, if this is the case, then how should companies organize themselves to start using this? And we've said it a few times, the immediate challenge is not of AI displacing people, but of people using AI displacing other people who are not using AI. So that's, I think, the next frontier immediately in front of us, right? I give to you that there are at least 4 things that we need to get right. One is the data itself. The second one is the platform on which we use this data. Third is the kind of problems we are trying to solve. So these are the use cases on which this AI will be harnessed to solve issues. And fourth is the capability, the people who need to be trained and need to understand how to use this and move forward. So getting into this now, first, let me talk about data. So, so far, our majority of efforts in procurement have been around a very narrow sources of data. So this is your ERP, either on cloud or on-prem, which is the typical SAP Oracle thing. Then we kind of come to some other systems. So we are now starting to expand this, and we need to do this now very systematically in a structured way if we are to use all the wonderful things that generative AI is supposed to give us. So the first is just on-premise systems and other systems which may be coming from the integrated business planning, supply chain, product lifecycle management, or it comes from warehousing or transportation management. Once you've kind of integrated other associated systems near procurement, which is then coming from either the planning function, supply chain, product management, and so on, we're looking at market data, indices, weather, geopolitical information, analyst reports, how to plug them also into it, right? Some other cloud solutions like Workday, for example, or SAP, SAP, SuccessFactors, and so on. Looking at the overall supplier intelligence information set, which is there, coming from various sources, EcoVadis, Dealbook, DNB, others, right? And then looking at portals from which we are now starting to order, right? Indirects have now plenty of portals where you can actually order things. Directs also have their own links, EDI or CXML and so on, where you get a lot of information back and forth between the suppliers and the company, right? So all of this now needs to be brought in, digested, and provided in an information layer, which is then easily picked up by AI tools and us, and we can start working with them. But unless we make this enablement happen, we are not going to get the benefits of having some software which can deal with all this data together. So collecting that information, data engineering is very important in this particular case. That's one. That's a data element. Let me come to platform, right? So on platform again, we have again lots of external systems and data today across customers, suppliers, contract manufacturers, logistics service providers, and other agencies and third parties and so on. What we need now is a low-code cloud integration software. This is where all the data is being funneled, connected, and then provided, right? Some part of it obviously is going to be very core to you, which is your master data, your transactional data. But there are going to be other things. There are going to be third-party apps. There are going to be other information which we will be putting around and integrating this together with our master data and transactional data systems. On top of that, then we need something which is a low-code extensible platform. And this is again quite fundamentally important, because we can't be waiting for engineering to go and work on their system to come back after 6 months or an year to say, this is my next release, this is my next version, I'm going to make this available to you as a next generation of software. We need something which can start to work with us based on my data requirements and make a simpler effort to convert what I want into an app, into a form, into a way in which I can start analyzing or using data and applying it to make decisions. Right? So this basically then gets into a platform, gets into smart forms, gets workflows coming out of that, or APIs, which can then integrate again with my S2P application, which starts to then give me the insights I need or the decision support I need to start making decisions as a user, right? This is what I want. Just to explain what a low-code platform would do. So for example, let's say I am buying, just for the sake of it, let's say I'm buying rice today, right? What I want to know is whether my pricing for rice is right or not. And for that, maybe there is an underlying thing that I need. That means I need basically trade data. I need to know how much has been the crop that has been harvested this particular season, how much is the shortfall or surplus in that particular case, what's been happening with geopolitical conflicts, so what's available to ship or not. And that's something that I want. So I need 3 or 4 strands of data which are coming out from an external market side of it, commodity side of it. I'm actually putting that on. I'm then also overlaying my prices that I've been paying. And I want to see, or I want an app which basically says, anytime there is a gap which is increasing between my pricing and my commodity trend for rice, commodity pricing for rice, I need an alert as an email, as a pop-up, as a notification on my cell, or whatever it is. I should be able to build that without having to go to 10 different IT team members and say, this is what I want. By the time I explain to them, I'm half dead. I want to actually pull those things out, put them together, and really build this app and start to publish it and start to use it going forward. Right? And this is for any commodity, anything that I want to do. I basically want a system where I can pull the data stream, line it up with my transactional data, and start building alerts, insights, nudges to kind of take my decision. So this is what I want. It needs to be low code, it needs to be hassle-free, and I should be able to decide what I want as a user and be able to implement that and pull that out of the information. Because that information is today there, it is actionable. All I need is to put it out and put the logic in, and then set the alert for me to kind of take action on. So this is why the low code platform is important. Moving on to the third part, which is around AI use cases. And here, basically, just very quickly, I'm going to concentrate on 2 things. One, what we see happening is that all the AI capabilities are being embedded in the system. And second, as a custom application, right? Again, you're kind of also defining what is this new thing you want to do, and then AI is being used to deploy that. So, for example, if I'm looking at third-party risk management, I have a very different outlook as a logistics company versus a bank versus somebody else. So I need the same sort of tools, but the data requirements for it, the way in which I'm going to use it, the way I'm going to apply that for decision, the way I'm going to segment my suppliers or my third-party agents is going to be extremely different. And that is where I need a very custom solution. So not going into details, but just giving you a quick overview. There are multiple core AI capabilities like NLPs, computer vision, machine learning, cognitive computing. And against that, there could be multiple things that you could be doing, right? So you could be doing semantic modeling to understand or walk through news feeds, walk through market indices to get insights, for example. There are contextual chatbots which could start looking at questions and giving you answers on that, right? There could be parts where you could be doing supplier recommendations, for example. It could be simple things like image-based search or certificate readers or something, or invoice readers that could come from computer vision. So there are tons of things that you can do to also already make your current processes smarter. But the other thing is, on my S2P journey, this is an S2C sort of a process, source to contract, what are the various things I could do in terms of AI applications in terms of automation and so on. So what are some of the sourcing solutions, and how do I actually start to implement them within my various sub-steps in my source to contract step or my procure to pay step, right? So this is what it is. I think we are going to share this information. I would kind of just give you a sense of how this is without going into too much detail right now. Final point is on capabilities. So this is where I think it's important to look at it in two ways. My existing staff, my existing workforce needs to really upskill. They need to do more value-added stuff. So moving from follow-ups and transaction processing to category management, strategic sourcing, SRM, speaking to suppliers, speaking to stakeholders, and building those alignments and so on to get your projects through. The other part is inducting specific skill sets around data engineering, data science, MLOps, and then translators who can translate business requirements to these teams. That's super important. So having an AI COE or even identifying third parties who can specifically fill certain skill gaps would be super helpful from a capability standpoint when you're looking at your organization. So there you have it, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. This is basically about how should we actually organize ourselves to start harnessing AI. Now, I'll kind of leave just one page on this nuances around acquiring AI capabilities. So from a framework point of view, I would think about 5 things that you should think about when you're evaluating your products or services. So first one is around business strategy. So can the AI solution actually deliver the outcomes you want? Because AI is at the end of the day, a lot of times black box. You're not sure whether it is giving the right output or not. And there are things to be worried about. There is terms called hallucination, where it might give you a wrong answer. There is some amount of toxicity which gets built in, where it comes with its own biases, which you'll have to kind of look at before validating it straight away. So there are a lot of things which you need to test whether before kind of just accepting the supplier upon their claims. Data strategy, what are the different sources of data? Are you trolling emails? Are you trolling chat sites? Are you trolling things which are technically sensitive, technically personal information? Those are things to be understood. Are you sharing our data somewhere else as a third-party supplier? I like to know and like to stop you if you are planning to do some of that. Again, questions around ethics, questions around how do we govern the risk overall across, how do we ensure compliance, and is this actually going to then give you the benefits that you are going to, and have you kind of factored in all the costs that are there involved? So I think those are things that we need to think about before we can come to it. There is a paper that we have kind of worked on in collaboration with WEF. We're happy to share that after the session some point in time. So with that, I think I would pause and stop right now. Thank you very much for having me today. Maybe then over back to you, Tunir.
Thank you, Lalit. And in fact, the WEF report that Lalit just talked about is present as one of the handouts, or it's available for you to download as a part of the handouts. It's right there. But what I'll also do is maybe just send you as a part of a thank you note for joining us for this webinar. Thank you, Lalit, again, before moving on with the next session. I'm very sure all of you attendees would have found Lalit's session extremely thought-provoking and would help you in assessing what your next steps are in embedding AI in your respective organizations' procurement journeys. All right, moving on to the next segment of the webinar, we have a panel discussion lined up for you. Ladies and gentlemen, again, it's my privilege to introduce the exceptional panelists today. Our distinguished speakers bring them a wealth of experience, expertise, innovative thinking that promise to reshape our understanding of procurement in the digital age, per se. First, I'd like to welcome Jonathan Dutton, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Procurement and Supply Australasia. Welcome, JD. And then secondly, we have Victoria Forbig, who is the Vice President of Procurement at Zuellig Pharma, based out of Singapore. Again, welcome JD and Victoria to the session. I'll kick things off with the most critical question of them all. Can AI deliver the expected business outcomes and revolutionize procurement and supply chain? Victoria, we can start with you.
Without having a crystal ball, I think actually my personal belief is that yes, I believe this is truly revolutionary capability that should be able to drive immense change in the way we do business. But of course, it depends on a lot of the factors that also Lalit described, as in data accuracy, data completeness, the reach of these language models and platforms, and our own ability to apply and test them. Because I think this is AI is something that we really need to knuckle down on and do a lot of on-the-ground, real POCs and testing vis-a-vis our manual work to see where it delivers the best bang for its buck, and also be very aware of data privacy laws and also language complexities and et cetera, et cetera. So that's my answer to you.
We can hear you now.
So I was pushing the button for England, but it didn't seem to work. So apologies for that. Yeah, look, the answer to this question is yes. No question. We all understand and everybody gets the enormous potential of AI. So for me, the real question is, how soon can it revolutionize our world, the particular one we live in procurement land, and how? And I think that's the real question. How's it going to do that? We don't know what it's capable of yet. There's an anecdote that I think explains AI really well. Alan Turing, who was the mathematician during the Second World War, that did the maths to break the Enigma code, and he invented the first computer to do it. And what he was trying to do was invent artificial intelligence in 1943. And he didn't quite manage it, but he wrote a book in 1953 that defined what artificial intelligence will be. He said, we will have artificial intelligence when a computer can write a novel. Now, it's taken 70 years to get to ChatGPT. I'll tell you now, it's not going to take 70 years before a computer can write a decent novel. You might argue ChatGPT can do it today. It just can't do it very well. You know, we're seeing a turning point, and I think we all recognise this year this turning point of ChatGPT. So how far it can go, who knows? I'm in a hotel actually in Queensland, Australia at the moment. I went to an event yesterday and I'm at an event tomorrow, and AI will crop up at tomorrow, and it certainly came up yesterday. And it was really a question of how can it help the most? And I think that's the real question you should be asking right now. What can we use it for today? How do we get started? Where's its potential? And I think just at the moment, that's what everybody's struggling with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'll agree. And that particularly takes me to the next set of questions. I think that's exactly what people would also want to understand. All our attendees and procurement professionals would also like to understand what might be some of the standard applications of AI across, let's say, an entire S2P process. Victoria, would you want to jump in on this one first, and then we can go to JD?
So there are a couple of things, Tanir. It depends on the pockets and the pain points of the individual procurement functions and the businesses that they support. Because if there is no real business case to do AI, what people end up doing is experimenting with the tools that they have available and buying maybe some point AI solutions or POCing, you know, doing proof of concept of point POC solutions. So I give you an example. All of us should be having at least 3 different AI language models on our iPhones or phones to try and see the application of them and see what, and real life experience, what they can do and what their limitations are, and put them through a series of procurement, non-confidential, but procurement question sets that could, you know, help us understand their usage and their liability, their limitations. But there are some business cases where we really, really need AI already. So for example, in the situations where you have a lot of unstructured contracts or very complex contracts, in my company, it's not so much supplier contracts actually that are mostly following a clear template. It's actually client contracts, and some of them are 300-500 pages. We were looking high and dry to find an AI-enabled contract system that actually can take out a lot and make sense of a lot of unstructured data, multi-language, to be able to then fill up some less complex summary sheets to instruct us on the rights and liabilities and other things within it. There must be a real business case and business need for that, for a company to part money at a scale and commit to doing such, to using AI beyond, a free POC. But I'd encourage people to think about the problems in their for procurement source to pay journey. As Lalit said, there are problems within all of our source to pay journeys, be you direct or indirect, that you couldn't solve with the best of breed or best of suite solutions, which now could be well used if you find the right AI tool and then creating a business case for that.
And absolutely agreed with that. JD, would you, I think I absolutely agree with what Victoria just said, but is there anything that you'd like to add on, anything that you've heard with the procurement professionals that you've met? How are they sort of approaching, how do they think this is going to work out in the future?
No, I agree totally, Veronica. I thought that was all eminently sensible, and effectively, we don't know. So let's get experimenting and trying. You take a few leaps of faith here, back a few hunches, and see what we can do, see what the mathematics and the technology is capable of doing. But I think you can also approach the problem the other way around, from the other end. And I did that, and I wrote a list of 5 ways we could perhaps start to use AI right here, right now, give it a try, see what it comes up with. I've been playing around with it a little bit. I've got a guy, his computer bike, he keeps ringing me up saying my computer can write better articles on procurement than you can, JD. I thought, well, I'm a lot older than I look, and I've been doing this a long time. So I'd like to see what your computer comes up with. And his computer's rubbish, I tell you. His articles on procurement, they get a D, or, on a good day, a D plus, they're not good. And I think we work with him. He's asking the right questions. So I said, look, the trick is to craft the question right so the computer can do a better job of answering it. The problem with your article was not what the computer came up with. It was your question was rubbish, because you don't know anything about procurement. So let's get the questions right. And we're just doing that at the moment to give it a try and see what we can come up with. Now, these 5 things, what are the 5 areas we can get started in? Number 1, market intelligence. How can AI be a super Google? How can it ask better questions of Google than we do when we type in 3 or 4 words badly spelled? Can it do a better job than us? Can it build lists for us? Give me a list of 10 suppliers in Mexico that supply widgets. It could do that a lot faster than I could. So that's a real time saver. Give me a list of all the companies in India that are certified to standard 47B/3 on, steel production. It could do that a damn sight faster than I could. And I think it could also give me a list of, it could be quite subjective as well. Give me a list of the 3 top issues in this category from a procurement point of view. It should be able to do that a damn sight quicker than me. Or the top 5 issues in the energy industry in Australia, which is topical here where I am. Secondly, spend analysis. Now, I say spend analysis, and we all have an image in our mind straight away of a beautiful graphical interface with dodgy data. So, how do we improve that? Well, I think we take a hint here from what's already been done in this field. And I'm very passionate. I've had a background working in marketing as well. And 15 years ago, I was working in marketing. I told you I was old. And we had a program called SuperTidy. Now, SuperTidy works in Excel. And it only did one thing. It tidied up all the address data. It put the country in the right field, the state in the right field. It put the postcode in the right field. When there wasn't a postcode, it added one, and so on. So we got the address right. And then it added another column. So for these companies, add the company number. And that cleaned up the company data. So instead of having 18 companies with the same name and different variants, it consolidated it into one. That was really, really clever. It wasn't AI, it was just clever computing. And then we got it to add the SIC codes from the Dun & Bradstreet database, Ilion today. Now, AI should be able to do that today really, really well. So what we're saying is, give me clean data, and that is a really good contribution from AI. Now, after that, I can do the spend analysis myself using Power BI, which is free. But I could just say to the machine, present that to me in pie charts, graphs, bar charts, a Manhattan graph, whatever. However I want it, and it can do it instantly. And that is a massive time saver. And we all know the power of graphical user interface on data. It's getting the data right that's the key. I think what it'll also do there, much better than me, is it will point out anomalies, statistical outliers, and problems. So, computer, show me where we're buying the same widget or part number from different suppliers. Give me a list. Show me where we're paying different amounts for the same part. And it should be able to do that really well. And from there, any buyer from there can do a job. Thirdly, I think AI should be able to help with bid management. Now, funnily enough, last week I was, guess what, at an event, and we had someone from the dark side presenting, from the suppliers. And he revealed that many suppliers are using ChatGPT to write their proposals. And he said, well, it's not as bad news as it sounds, because 75% of proposals, actually, it's all the same for them. It's the human bit, the 20%, 25% that needs to be written for each one individually. And the amount of care they put into that is how much they value you as a potential customer. So that's not a bad thing. But I think we can use it the other way around. I think we can get the computer to evaluate bids and compare bids pretty well, because that's what it does when ChatGPT is writing an article. It's like a school child writing an article, define the question, give me the pros and cons. It does that well. So I think it can give me subjective bid evaluation pretty well. And it's a hop, skip, and a jump from there to take the prices I've been quoted from the 3 suppliers computer and show me what these things should cost. Do me should cost modeling. And I don't need to hire an expensive consultant or tie my analyst up for a week. A computer can do it. Now, at the risk of boring you, I think there's a 4th thing it can do pretty well, and we're not got here yet. And I think that's going to be smart contracts. So we don't need a contract manager. The computer can do it. So the computer can tell me, are we compliant on this contract? Is the supplier compliant? Now, if you program in at the start and ask the right question, there's 17 ways the supplier has to be compliant. When they upload, they're compliant. At this stage, a pretty raw tool, but it should get more sophisticated with the computer passing judgment on the level of compliance. Secondly, if we're programming KPIs, the computer should be able to say we've got a variance of minus 10% on your KPI performance on this contract because the supplier's inputting the data, and then it alerts me. I don't have to manage the contract; the computer's doing it, and it tells me when there's a problem. And then finally, it starts being really clever, and it starts applying contract clauses. And I expect within 5 years the computer to say to me that on your major contract with Biggins Engineering, JD, you're 62% compliant, 47% of deliveries have been late, you're 20% down on your KPIs because you're a useless buyer, JD, by the way. But I've done the job for you, and I've applied 20% of liquidated damages, and I've offset that off the last invoice. Now, I think the technology is probably there, and Lateef will tell you, is there today. But whether we're capable of asking the questions well enough to deploy that tool, I think is part of the question. But I'd expect that a computer of this sophistication should be able to do that sooner rather than later. And finally, I think there's other things, odd jobs that they can do for us. And we've all got an example. Like every one of us have got probably I mean, you mentioned at the start other sophisticated technologies, robotic process automation, bots. Get the AI to tell the bots what to do, and maybe the bots get a bit smarter. But there's one really sexy example which I'd like to share with you from New Zealand, and I saw it last week, and it was wonderful and it was terrifying. So it's a US product. It's being retailed in New Zealand, as I said, and it's an AI avatar that does negotiation training. So you do your online negotiation training over just like this with a window, just like Zoom or GoToWebinar, and you negotiate with a computer. It's a chess computer. You're playing negotiation instead of chess with the computer, and a robot, an avatar, just like off the movies, and you negotiate with the avatar, and it rewards good negotiation practice and it punishes bad negotiation practice. So look, I've not had a go myself, but I'm dying to give it a try. And what a good way of practicing. What's really good, it's not a 2-day negotiation course in a room. You can do 5 minutes at a time. You do it at home in the evenings. You do it on the train going to work, whatever. And I think that is a really novel way of doing it. I don't know if it's any good, but they'll get there, won't they? Within a few years. If it's not good today, it will be. Look, I'm sorry to go on, but I thought it was a great question. And, you know, and I've been harvesting everybody's thoughts on this. And, you know, my checklist, I think, is a start, but it's only a start. And it's limited by our imagination, I think.
I'd say so. And I think you're absolutely right where you said that just to trigger the AI model the right way, I think the right set of questions need to be asked. And I also feel that, you know, the AI model needs to be trained as well. As we go, the AI model is going to keep on getting trained. It's going to learn more. It's going to give you, if not the right answer, let's say if it's 50% right today, it's going to give you and maybe an 80% right answer in the next 6 months or so, because the model needs to be trained as well. Asking the right set of questions always work. Doesn't matter if it's AI or if it's human. All right.
But
so
I think
that
I think that's going to be
things. JD, hang on a second. There are a couple of things that we do need to, like as procurement professionals, be aware of, right? Because we're also the ones who are either buying or supporting our IT and other departments to buy. What we're talking about here is we're mixing use cases that you can go off and experiment with open data sources like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Bing, etc., and actually closed ones that you put as the low-code model layer on top of your own. And you have to be very careful as procurement. I mean, you can play around and experiment with things, but data privacy is huge. Ownership of who does this AI belongs to, because you're training it and then it becomes smarter, and then actually you're supporting the supplier by enhancing its product. Having an understanding of the use cases, JD, that are applicable for open source AI versus the ones that you absolutely have to put a proper commercial but also legal framework around, because it's your confidential data, is hugely important. But the use cases that you said that you can do with ChatGPT, Bing, Perplexity, definitely I agree with. The other ones, I go back to the TCO model. The AI cases which actually are really, really important and going off now is for supplier relationship management and sustainability. There are a lot of new solutions out there that are cost competitive and that actually skim through the Googles and the webs of this world to find you information about your suppliers, positive or negative. Yeah. These are the actual use cases that we can do that have cost implications. I think what you need to do is a step further, go back and say, okay, what are the procurement scenarios that I can do for free and play around with and have some fun with? What are the ones that I have to invest in? And for both of them, actually, I haven't seen a case yet, even with the very sophisticated AIs that we were using in our company for where the AI hasn't hallucinated yet. And even in the case of the supplier relationship management sustainability, where the AI searches the web and finds information, I saw a lot of false positives as well. So you, at the moment, cannot get away with actually looking having still experts within your company, looking at, it's like a junior person who works with you, but you still need to put the effort to make sure that you look at the information provided, make sure that there are no silly things happening within the answer that this AI gives you. And this is a hugely important point that I want to make in the contractual AI that we've purchased, as well as in the sustainability AI. I have to review the outcome at the moment, because it's not capable of producing 100% sound outcome. For the ones that are ChatGPT Perplexity ones, they're only good based on the data set that they research. If there are no references of the data set, you're at a big risk. I am working along 14 countries in Asia. And when I ask specific questions about Asian suppliers and I ask for references, the references it comes out with are only English speaking, like Singapore. But the majority of my suppliers are maybe in Indonesia and Philippines. It just doesn't drill down to that level, or doesn't actually go to any of the web searches in Bahasa or anything. And that's a huge issue for us procurement professionals, because otherwise what the danger is that you are losing out on the suppliers that are not easily to be found because of different, limitations of actually the AI and how it searches. So be aware of this. I'm not saying don't do it, be aware of this, do it, find the right use cases, understand which ones can be done for free and which ones you have to partner with the supplier to together teach the AI to do the necessary procurement operation. Sorry, I'm really passionate about it. Sorry to cut it off, but I needed to make that point.
We're in danger of having an agreeing contest, because I agree entirely. And my next point, because you've already done it, answering the next question, what are the challenges? And my next point was this, exactly that. Don't assume that AI is right. Don't assume it's good. And don't assume it's infallible, because I found it to be bad, totally fallible, and rarely totally correct. So early days, but you look at how far it's come in a few months, where we're going to be in a few years. But I totally agree that the principal job of the human is to sense check the stupid computer and what it's coming up with today. But at the moment, it can save us a lot of time. And I don't know a procurement team which isn't under-resourced and isn't stretched and doesn't have workload overload post-COVID. So, if it saves us time, that's a good start. But I agreed with your earlier point, which is, experimentation. But on that basis, not on the basis that the computer's going to get it right, because it isn't yet.
Fair enough. I think we have discussed some limitations as well. We've discussed some challenges. I think we've spoken about, ethics and governance and privacy as well. You can't, let's say if we are uploading a certain contract, it's very, very difficult. We have to stonewall the information. At the end of the day, I think it's very, very important to ensure that the data is, whatever data has been uploaded, let's say if it's the engine that we're using in-house, it has to be stonewalled because the information cannot go out. Again, I think we've discussed most of it. I think we understand basic from Lalit's presentation and the thoughts shared today by our panelists. How can we harness the actual potential of AI? It's in a very nascent stage right now, but I think we're building great capabilities up. It has a lot of potential, and I do think that this is gonna work out pretty well in all our favors in the future. Even me as a marketing person, I have seen the things that it can do, and I'm very, very sure it does translate enough for procurement professionals and supply chain professionals as well. With that, Jonathan, Victoria, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. We're top of the hour. We do have some questions coming in from the attendees as well, but what I'll do is I'll share those questions with everybody who's here, and all of us can share our insights on that one particular question. And we'll get back to you over an email. Since we're on the top of the hour, we'd like to close this one. I would like to thank you again on behalf of our panelists and our speakers today for joining us, and we look forward to speaking with you in the future. Thank you so much again, everybody. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Bye.